Okay, welcome everybody to our fourth capstone session of the day. Thank you so much for being here. We have Molly Schultz presenting this time around on teen movies. Teen movies have been fan favorites for decades, but have we ever thought about the negative repercussions of the stereotypes they spread? By speaking with many people of different generations, Molly determined that teenagers' lives are not as predictable as the lives of teens in movies. Using the information she learned through the interviews, she created her own teen movie, which is a more accurate depiction of teen life. All right, Molly, go for it.
Thank you guys for coming. So my capstone presentation dives into the history of the teenager and the development and progress of teen movies and their stereotypes over time. Now, this might be a historical photo, but believe it or not, the history of the teenager goes even further back. Talking about the history of the teenager can be complicated because, of course, you could be of the ages 13 to 19 before the teenager existed, but there was no prolonged state of adolescence that we have now with teenagers. After the Industrial Revolution, the increase in restrictions surrounding child labor and more reform in education, kids began to stay in school longer and weren't allowed to work as much. This allowed them to be kids longer, but as they grew in age, they grew in maturity too. This birthed the in-between stage we have now, teenagers. As kids began to attend school for longer, high schools started to shift the social norms that were in place for the young adults before them. High schoolers would abandon the traditions of courting and would favor dating instead. Boys and girls could even go on unchaperoned joyrides together with their parents only hoping their destination was the library. Often, these new teens would pile in their cars to attend social events, maybe even parties. This new age group was shocking to their parents, who had grown up so differently from them. They had financial freedom from allowance or part-time jobs and began to spend their earnings at theaters and became an influential spending bracket, and the movie market took note. With their increase in spending both money and time in the movie theaters, many movies began to depict their ever-growing audience of teens. The older movies I have chosen to focus on are Rebel Without a Cause and Grease. These movies show early interpretations of teen life and all depict similar tropes. They depict turbulent romances and star-crossed lovers. Danny and Sandy from Grease are a classic example of this. They have to grapple with their differing social circles and their friends' expectations of them to unite and find their true love. Another important stereotype we can see in these movies is the conflict between the teens and authority. This conflict shows up time and time again in these movies and is likely rooted in early teenagers' rebellion against the fairly recent past. We can see this in the three main characters in Rebel Without a Cause: Jim, Judy, and Plato. The most significant authoritative conflict these characters experience is with their parents, who vary from absent to overbearing and judgmental. These tropes likely sound familiar, and you can see them taking place in more recent movies too. These movies set the standard for what a teen movie needs to be successful, and we see modern movies trying to grip onto their fame and success, but often flopping nonetheless. One thing you might notice in these films is the presence of white, middle class, and heterosexual main characters, which is a flaw we still see in the movie industry today. Unrealistic expectations. Have you ever watched a teen movie and thought, this never happens in real life? I have always wondered why all movies are structured the same, with their predictable romances, hating their parents, and pretty straight and white main characters. These have to be harmful, right? They're placing all teenagers and teen life experiences in a box. I have never met anyone with a high school experience like Clueless, but who wants to date their ex-stepbrother anyways? I interviewed several people in different stages of their lives, and they shared with me parts of their high school experiences and what expectations they had from movies. Jasmine LaRocca, who graduated high school in 2012, had this to say about teen movies. I was obsessed with the 90s and 80s high school movies, and my favorite was Heathers, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, and 16 Candles. So you can say I was a hopeless romantic. Aside from the plot of Heathers, I wanted high school to be like these movies. Jasmine is just one example of how people can take these movies and idolize them and the experiences that those characters have. I also interviewed Abby Sinha, a freshman at Williamsville North High School, who, in response to a question about whether or not teen media was realistic, said, "No, definitely not. It's completely unrealistic. The highs of high school are not that impressive in real life." These movies often set up young teens with unrealistic expectations for what high school will be like. In the movies, we see people going to parties every weekend, people either caring too little or too much about their grades, intense clique structures, people being judged for how they look, but once the glasses are off, they're suddenly attractive, and beautiful 30-year-olds walking the halls passing as kids. None of this has happened in my high school experience, at least not to the extremes depicted in the movies. I wonder, is there hope in future teen movies? And will we stop setting these unrealistic standards for what high school and teen life should be like? You might notice something very similar going on here, but I promise I did not just copy and paste my slides without changing anything. As movies progress, society is progressing alongside it. Two newer movies I decided to look at are The Hate U Give and Booksmart. These movies include all the same things as our earlier movies, but they have progressed in a very important way. These movies are more diverse and include possibly more realistic expectations. The Hate U Give features mostly Black main characters, and Star has to grapple with her childhood best friend dying from an act of police brutality. The movie Booksmart features main characters who don't live up to the traditional beauty standards, and one of whom is gay. These new movies provide a broader and more inclusive range of characters. While newer, they contain everything we have seen before. We still have the classic romantic interests and conflict with authority and social circles. These familiar tropes contain new portrayals. As her inner conflict, Star has to grapple with code switching through her all-white school and her Black community and family. And in Booksmart, we see the romantic interests of the main characters change as they explore themselves, instead of changing themselves to fit in. These are new takes on old tropes and show the teen movies industry's welcomed changes. Hope for the future. I have hope that we will continue to see growth and change in teen movies. For my artifact, I decided to create my own teen mini movie, which is hopefully more realistic than the blockbuster films.
My name is Molly Schultz. I became a teenager on January 7th of 2016, and I will stop being a teenager on January 7th of 2023. We see teens in movies constantly and often wonder why our lives aren't like theirs. But I'm not Cher from Clueless, and you're not Kat from 10 Things I Hate About You. And none of us will ever be Molly Ringwald. And that's okay.
What about... Oh my god, can I tell the time we all pierced our ears?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fun.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So, the summer before our sophomore year, it was me, Molly, Claire, and Eva, and Claire and I were, like, doing something all day. We were doing some, like, volunteering thing. and we came home, and we'd all planned to pierce our ears that night. And my mom had initially said yes, but then she said no. And we thought that my parents were going out, but then they didn't end up going out. So, but they like sleep in our attic, so it was fine. So my friends and I, we went in the bathroom. Eventually, Eva and Molly came over at like midnight, not midnight, like
it's a little while, but we're done bleeding. Like, it's okay. But I'm a little scared because blood kind of scares me a bit. Like, when I hit my head, guys, I'm so surprised I didn't scream because when I like hit my head, I was like, yeah. So Molly was gonna do it with my twin, love her so much, and then she was like, nah, bro. And then I was like, okay. And then Eva was gonna do it. She went up there, me with no piercings, no experience. I went up there, I pushed it through, except it didn't go all the way through. So
wild.
It's a little wild in here. Sorry, everybody. I'm really scared to put the back on. What? Is it really? Like, the other one's big.
Where's the other one?
Okay, my name is Abby Sinha. I'm 14 years old. I'm a freshman at Williamsville North High School.
Do you feel as those were accurate portrayals of younger teen years?
No, definitely not. I think it's a lot more, well, just completely unrealistic in general, but it's a lot more, like, I don't want to say positive, because it's not like being a teen isn't positive, but most movies, books, shows, etc. are a little bit exaggerative.
For the 14th time?
Yeah, what if you just talk about acting?
What's your memory of choice?
okay, was this last year, junior year? I wish I had a memory. Okay.
It was junior year, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Junior year when me and you and Katie and Annabelle and Eva, and I don't even know who was there, we were at Annabelle's house in the living room.
Eva was not there.
Okay. Yikes. Or Eva. And we went out for ice cream at like 4 a.m. on Hurdle. And I remember laying on Annabelle's floor, getting a tattoo from Katie. Last favorite memory is when we all went to Ellicottville, to Annabelle's house in Ellicottville. And we had a little photo shoot, and we went and got dinner, and then we almost broke Clara's car on the way up a hill to look at the sunset. And then we didn't look at the sunset because Clara was stressed out about how her car broke. Then we went right back down the hill. And then we drank energy drinks and chatted until the early hours of the night. And then the next day we went, the next day school started. Well, the next day was the day before school started. And then we went right back to Ellicottville to do the high ropes course at Holiday Valley, which was really fun. And that's it.
Yeah. So they're all good contenders. I was thinking about our near-death experience on the hill today, which is so good that you brought it up, because I completely forgot about it until today. I was thinking about it.
Yeah, it was such a huge thing, and we really just blocked it out.
All right, so that was all I had to share for my artifact. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Okay, so if you have questions for Molly, please drop them in the chat, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask.
Molly, can I ask you a question?
Yes, you can, Rain.
What would you rate your high school experience out of 10?
Out of 10, I'm gonna go with 8.5.
All right, in the chat, I see Joe asks, what is an example of a good teen movie?
I'm going to say at least my favorite teen movie right now is Booksmart, definitely. I love that it has two female main characters and it shows them dealing with like communication issues in their relationship and like them getting over that. And I that's my favorite movie right now. I think it's really good, really awesome. Give it a watch.
And Ms. Wright asks, do you think realism or realistic expectations are the most important goals for a movie?
I don't think they're the most important goals for a movie because it is always entertaining to see crazy things happen in a movie. But I do think they are somewhat important because when we always see these unrealistic expectations and the same characters doing the same things all the time, when you aren't like those main characters and you don't look like them or act like them, it can be harmful to see characters that look like you and act like you always being pushed to the side and belittled by these bigger characters.
All right. Becca, exclamation point, asks, are you going to apply your studies to your future? And if so, how? Like, are you interested in pursuing film, etc.?
I am not particularly interested in pursuing film. It has been something that I have thought about, but right now I don't think it's right for me. I just really like watching movies and I like picking apart movies. So I think it's just more of a hobby of mine, not something I'd necessarily pursue.
Okay. Katie Bergstrom asks, do you think the teen trope will change at all post-quarantine and post-COVID-19?
I have a big feeling that the teen movies will really harp on the pandemic for a very long time. I think we're gonna get pandemic content for decades. So I feel like they'll probably start using social media a lot more because that has become such a bigger part of our lives in the pandemic. So yeah, I think it'll just shift a little bit, but I don't necessarily think that they're going to take away any previous stereotypes.
Shannon asks, do you think TV shows are better or worse at depicting typical teen life than movies are?
I'm going to say that TV shows are better at depicting typical teen life because there is more time in a TV show. They can show the more mundane things about teen life, like doing your homework, having family time, and the more basic things that we do every day. With a movie, they cut a lot of that out just to get to like the meat and the substance of the movie. So it makes it seem like those characters don't do those things.
I have a question. What would be one experience like that you haven't seen in a movie that you would like to see depicted in film?
I would like to see healthy relationships depicted in movies. Thank you, Annabelle, for my healthy relationship knowledge. All of the characters in movies tend to just have really bad communication and they do just blow up at everyone, their parents, teachers, even their friends, and they have just bad communication skills. No one ever really talks about their feelings unless it's in a big fight in movies. So I would love to see that happen.
Mrs. Hopkins asked, which TV shows do you like?
That's a tough one, Mrs. Hopkins. My attention span is not particularly one for TV shows, but I do like One Day at a Time on Netflix. That's a really good one. One of the main characters is gay and has to deal with coming out to her like really religious family. So that's a good one.
That's the remake, because that was like in the 70s. Okay. Yeah, I used to watch that one.
Any other questions? All right, well, oh, hang on, there's more coming into the chat. Molly, you inspired a lot of thinking. Miss Coffee asks, have you seen Easy A? If yes, what do you think about the main character's relationship with her parents?
I have seen Easy A, and it was something I watched only recently, like a couple months ago. I watched it, and I remember being very shocked at the relationship with her parents. She has very open communication, and this is something I see sometimes in movies, but a lot of times it's parodied in these movies, where a character will be like okay with sharing and talking to their parents in the movies, and it's like a joke. It's like, oh, your parents are so weird, but it wasn't like this in Easy A. It was they just had a good relationship all around. I enjoyed that. I appreciated that about the movie.
And let's see, Joe asks, do you think that problematic overtones such as sexual assault in The Breakfast Club, sexism in Grease, racism in 16 Candles, etc., heighten or diminish the idea of unrealistic standards as it shows problems at the time?
I think that all of those overtones in these movies, I don't know, Joe. I do not know my answer to that. I feel like it is often just a product of the times, unfortunately, with those older movies. So I don't know how we would go at it with a modern reading as to how those play into like the standards and the stereotypes. But I do think that they, especially the sexism, they like promote that for future teen movies because those movies are so successful. And sexism is something that's easier to look over as like, oh, just high school stuff, that rather than like racism in 16 Candles. So I think it sort of promotes that behavior because newer movies will copy what the older movies have done.
All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for coming and for your great questions. And thank you, Molly, for your awesome work. Well done.